there are some research done by some institutions saying some of the companies actually fraud. They are not real. They are cheating U.S. investors and also investors back in China. So what is your reaction to news like this?
Right. Well, probably the biggest news came from the magazine Barron's. It's a financial magazine in the U.S., and they did research and claimed that a lot of Chinese companies listing in the U.S. through a reverse merger are actually frauds. And there's other groups that have said similar things. Now, I think it's really important to say that, of course, there are frauds in China. There's frauds in the U.S. Any country in the world, there are some companies that are doing fraudulent financials or misleading investors. So this is not a surprise that there are some. The problem is that Barron's claiming maybe it's a lot. And a lot is obviously relative. It might be more than in the U.S. or it might be less. But the problem is that up until now, because U.S. investors maybe didn't have the ability to check into Chinese companies, they couldn't find out whether or not any given company was really having the kind of financial numbers that they were claiming. So now that some people and institutions have started to do that, they've started to find, okay, there may be some frauds here or there, while before they couldn't find those.
So do you see this is going to be a trend? Because this sound alarm already. So maybe more and more institutional investors, they have the capital, they have the manpower, they have the know-how. They just set up a base office, maybe either in Hong Kong or in China, actually to check out what is going on over there. Maybe we find out a lot of this kind of case. Will that be really bad news for both Chinese entrepreneurs? Because it's going to be raised, the bar and standard is going to be raised much higher than before, or bad news for U.S. investors because no matter what, they get out quickly, they can make some money.
Well, I think it's very easy to see the bad news here. It's easy to look at it and say, oh my gosh, some places are claiming that China has lots of frauds, some of these companies are frauds, and it's going to hurt investment in Chinese companies, it's going to cause this kind of problem. And that's true. In the short term, in the near future, I think a lot of investors in the U.S. and other countries are going to be more cautious and slower to invest in Chinese companies. And that's going to hurt some Chinese companies, to be honest. But in the long term, I think that this is actually good news. Why is it good news? It's because, first, you're going to have the kind of institutions develop in China that can check on companies' financials, prove that these companies are really what they say they are, that the companies really have the kind of financial numbers that they claim. And you'll have actually more business this way. You'll have more investors willing to trust these companies. And in the long run, I think you'll actually have a better economy in China because of this crisis right now. But right now, in the short term, in the next few years, I think it will be tricky for a lot of Chinese companies. And there's some steps that they should take. If you're not a fraud, obviously you need to be able to show investors in the U.S. and other countries, hey, look, we've got good financials here. And one way to do that is to have a legitimate audit, find an auditor that's respected or trusted, or find other individuals and companies to work with you, like a trusted law firm or trusted investment bank. If you're working with a company, whether it's an auditor, a law firm, or investment bank that has worked with other fraudulent companies, investors are going to be a little bit suspicious and worried before they invest in you.
I think there might be sometimes a misunderstanding because the communications problems, because the concept of what should be counted on the book, what should be counted off the book. Not necessarily they are fraud, they may make some mistakes. So maybe from this, what is going on right now, they can learn some lessons that they need to learn what is the correct way to do it.
That's an excellent point. I mean, if an investor is looking at a company in China, they want to feel like they can trust the numbers. It doesn't really matter to the investor in one sense if it's a fraud or if it's just a mistake, because the end result is the same. If the company made a mistake and they're not as profitable, or if they're a fraud and they're not as profitable, it's really kind of the same thing for the investor. So what the Chinese company wants to do is they want to work with some kind of either auditor or investor relations company or law firm that they know is established and is trustworthy and can present them to investors and say, look, this company, you can trust it. We checked it out. For example, a lot of law firms, when a company lists in China, a Chinese company lists in the U.S., law firms will do what's called due diligence. They'll look into the company and make sure that all the financials are accurate. And so that law firm puts its own credibility on the line. It says, hey, we as a big law firm, we're saying that we trust this company, and we're representing that company. And the same thing goes for example, investor relations or investment banks or whoever you're working with. if you work with a company that's trusted and that trusted group researches your company, then investors are more likely to trust you.
Could that be another case, like some short sellers want to make some quick money?
Oh, sure.
They just write some articles, maybe not even true, but they can make the stock move. So is that a possibility?
There's always the danger of this going on, and it's going to happen all the time. For any company, whether it's American or Chinese or anywhere else, some people will try to push false rumors, or maybe even a rumor that's true, but they push it and exaggerate it. And in that way, they can either sell their stock short, or maybe they can make their stock fall and then buy it. That's the kind of stuff that happens. And obviously, it's regulated. The SEC tries to watch out for that kind of activity. But, that's going to happen to everybody, whether you're a Chinese company or American company.
在下个星期的节目当中，我们会专访一些目前正在受理对中国公司指控的这些个案的美国证券的律师，那么请他们来谈一谈中国公司应该如何避免这些现象再度发生。以上就是这节的环球财经单元，谢谢您的收看，我是庞哲，我们在下星期同一时间再会。现在将现场交会在香港直播室的主播任任。